Welcome to episode 9.
I believe it is already 9.
How you like them apples?
It's almost at the double digits.
Coach's Corner with Justin and Ethan, episode 9.
Today
we're going to be talking about a really easy, light subject. This stuff called Ozempic.
Yeah, not really pertinent.
No.
It's just kind of an interest of ours.
It's this kind of like underground,
It's on the low.
alternative
Black
thing.
market only.
Yeah. There kind of is a black market for it.
There is.
Yeah, it's like you can't actually the only FDA approved one is I forget the name of it, but it's not Ozempic actually. So you have to get diagnosed with something else to get prescribed the more popular ones. But there's only one that's actually FDA approved for weight loss.
It's Wegovy, I believe.
Yeah, Wegovy,
which is technically made, which is Ozempic fundamentally. It's the same,
right?
But it's Wegovy.
It's all semaglutides.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting when you dig into this stuff. But anyways, here we're gonna be chatting about Ozempic today, and I guess I just want to pre-frame this with listen, we're not doctors.
No.
We are trainers, and so what we see is we're more frontline. We see people who we're usually the first person people reach out to who are struggling with weight loss, and then so today is going to be our own research and our own sort of experience with this stuff, and just hey, take our word for it. Don't take our word for it. You're an adult. You can do whatever you want to do. If you feel it's the right choice for you, great, wonderful.
Yeah.
We're going to just compare and contrast and then give our own 2 cents on what we see in real life. And we'll go from there and maybe help just inform you to make your own decisions based off of some real data, right?
The best decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The best decisions for yourself,
For your loved
your
ones.
future,
No.
your life.
For your life. It's true, though.
Yeah, listen. So, cool. So why don't we start off with talking about what the hell this thing is.
The Ozempic.
This enigma wrapped in a riddle, shrouded in mystery.
Chose such a good name for the Ozempic.
Yeah. It's almost like Olympics, but it's a weight. But instead of trained, dedicated, lifelong athletes, it's a weight loss injection.
It's a weight loss injection.
It's almost
it's a diabetes injection.
It's a diabetes injection.
Now it's a weight loss injection. Oh, geez. It's already begun.
Here we go. We're not biased.
Not at all.
So funny thing about that, and I think everyone kind of realizes that it's a diabetes thing, right? That it was originally made to help manage glucose levels, right?
Yes.
And now they've realized, it also blocks hunger signals, and so it's this kind of miracle weight loss drug.
Yep, exactly.
Funny thing about
slows the release of food, all this kind of stuff.
Funny thing about it though is that there's such demand for it for weight loss that there's a shortage for people who are actually diabetic.
It's crazy.
Right. So let's talk about what it is, and just maybe a little bit of the history of it, and then we can kind of break down what it does to us. So, what is it, man? What the fuck is this?
It's a semi-glutide.
Well, there we go. Moving on.
And there are a few different brands that actually have some different compounds in them. But fundamentally, you have Ozempic, which was originally created for diabetes. Then FDA approved Wegovy by the same company. You now have Mounjaro, which is, I think, approved for diabetes. And then their second one is called, I just had it, Zepbound. And but the actual active ingredient is called zerpeptide. Zerpeptide. So that's what's the actual chemical in Mounjaro and Zepbound.
What is this Zepbound?
It's basically, what it does is it basically signals the release of the pancreas to release basically what they call GLP-1, which I'm not going to even bother to butcher the...
Yeah,
it's a glucagon-like peptide, basically, and it bonds to these receptors, and it fundamentally gives you the sensation of being full, slows down the emptying of your stomach, and regulates your blood sugar. So your
blood sugar
just can't flop all over the place.
Which is makes sense for diabetics, and we've got to regulate that blood sugar. This is great. So that's kind of the history of it. That's sort of the intention of it back in the day was this, and then obviously weight loss is an epidemic, man. Obesity is an epidemic, I should say. In America.
Yes.
And by the way, most developed countries are not that far behind. I think we like to be the whipping boy of the world as far as Americans. But at the end of the day, like look at like us, like wealthy countries like Australia, Japan, Korea, UK. I mean, they're not that far behind, like
Japan's pretty far behind, but that's
Japan is probably not accurate.
But even in Japan, unfortunately, you're starting to see like there was almost no obesity in Japan, and now you are starting to see this rise. And so it's interesting because it's like we were just the forefront of it all.
We just got rich first.
Yeah, pretty much. No, but in a lot of ways, well, it just makes you question like, what about the food is changing? How I was talking to a client about that. Of just, it seems like Western food choices and Western culture surrounding them kind of have spread to more places, and it just so seems that
sure, you
as
can
that
get KFC
happens,
anywhere now.
Yeah,
yeah, and also it's just like yes, the food industry and. This is a different topic a little bit, but still whatever. But like, yes, food industries are all, Satan worshipers and masochists and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's also choice.
Well, I was going to say, we're the ones choosing to eat
it's
the
a
food.
market and there's demand. And so they fulfill the demand and we eat it. We don't have to. We can choose not to. But yes, that's
true.
An education issue. But anyway, so back to Ozempic and just sort of why I think it does tie into that is because we're at such an epidemic that 70% of adults are considered obese, I think, or something like that, or overweight
or obese in America. Yeah, 70%.
70%.
Absurd number.
And we know that weight loss is hard because here's the thing: the lifestyle that one has to become obese is the exact opposite of the lifestyle one needs to not be obese. And so, man. I'll be 40 years old this year. So will you.
Yep.
Crazy. But it's not easy when you're set in your ways to just change.
Yeah, change is just hard. Yeah, it's just turn around and eat better and exercise regularly and go on your walks. No big deal.
Just hit that 10,000 steps, train with weights 3 days a week, do an hour of cardio.
Cook your own food.
Meal prep.
Eat only
calories.
Whole food. Shop only at the edge of the grocery store. Like...
It's like, yeah, right.
Just do that tomorrow.
Maybe if you're like a blank canvas, 16-year-old, that you can make those impressions.
Men in Black, and all of a sudden,
50-year-old who's like 300 pounds, who's been eating like shit for 30 years. It's like, good luck.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's why this is just the miracle. I mean, it's insane. It's just the miracle drug right now that everyone's been looking for.
So they think.
Or is it?
Or so they think.
Or is it?
Yep.
So... what do we know about it? We know that it helps suppress appetite. We know that it helps regulate blood sugar.
Yeah, slows the emptying of the stomach.
Slows the emptying of the stomach.
Yeah.
So you just feel fuller longer, essentially, is what that translates to.
Yep.
And it's essentially a shot, right? You take it in the arm.
Take it in the arm, take it in the belly.
Take it in the belly, yeah.
Once a week?
Once a week. So... certainly the quick fix, I think, right? Where I think that, no doubt, we all know somebody who's on it and shit does work, right?
I mean, that's the thing. I think I think we are all attracted to a quick fix.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a no-brainer, especially the Western culture in general. I think the American way, it's advertised as all you got to do is this one thing. This one toothpaste will cure all your teeth problems, whatever it might be. And so I think it is in the sense it appeals very much to that I've struggled with it, or I haven't done anything, or I'm just lazy, or whatever mentality you're coming into it with, which might be valid or might not be the best choice, but it's like all you have to do is get the shot, and the rest is taken care of for you.
Yeah.
Like you're literally not hungry. It's not even that you're like starving and the weight comes off.
And that was the point I wanted to bring up because we did a whole episode on like why 90% of people who lose weight gain it all back. And one of the biggest issues is just appetite regulation.
Yeah.
It's the pernicious thing about obesity is that as you the more weight you lose, there's like a 3x difference between the amount of calories your body burns versus how hungry you feel. So in other words, it's crazy. Like it goes like this. For every kilo you lose,
every 2.2 pounds you lose,
every 2.2 pounds you lose, every kilo you lose, it reduces your metabolism, your metabolic rate by 30 calories, give or take. But it increases your hunger by almost 100.
That's crazy.
So there's a 3x differential between the hunger you're feeling and the lowering of your metabolism. So literally it's a runaway system.
Yeah.
It's like your metabolism is going down, so your body's burning less calories, which is that's common with anybody who loses weight.
Typical,
If you're just less person to move throughout space and time, you're going to burn less calories. But anyway, so metabolism goes down as you lose weight. But the problem with obesity is that your body is feverishly trying to get you to eat more food to put those body fat stores back in your body. And that's the pernicious thing about it. And so you get insane hunger and you're burning less calories. So you have to actually eat less in order to actually see the scale keep going down. Yet you're battling with 3-4 times the amount of hunger signals that you had before. And that's why it's just so difficult.
It's wild. I was talking to a client that would be considered obese, and he was talking about like, he's like, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but he's like, take the hungriest you've ever been in your life, just like whatever situation that might be, and just imagine like feeling that all the time, just like this hunger or this perceived want or need for food that is just so deep and so consistent, this like nagging like demon on your shoulder at all times, and like that's not an easy thing to face. I mean, I think we all know what we're like when we're hungry, or what kind of decisions we make when we're hungry.
You're irritable, it's like you can't think straight.
Willpower kind of goes out the window, so I could imagine that just from a hormonal situation that you're dealing with the situation that you just talked about, that it's not easy necessarily. It's a hard battle.
So crazy. And and that's where we just have to not be so hardcore and just like, no, you need to clean up your fucking lifestyle, pussy.
Yeah, like exercise and diet. It's your fault if you can't make the right decisions. It's like,
obviously things that we don't understand about that. And that's why we're not sitting here like, don't ever do it. I think that what we're trying to find is the nuance here.
Yeah.
In who is this for? And listen, if you are, BMI over 30, clinically obese, lifelong issue with this stuff, you know what? Maybe
it might be a good choice for you. I mean, it's
maybe.
I think that like, especially because not all of them deal with stroke and heart attack and heart disease, but I believe Mounjaro does. Am I saying that right? Mounjaro, there you go. So that one actually does, even if you're not diabetic, fight those metabolic diseases. And so if you're obese, it's good for people that are obese but aren't necessarily diabetic, because it can help with those diseases that are often related to being that kind of weight.
Right.
And I think for a person that might struggle like that with food and might have done what they can and tried their best up to a certain point and maybe facing, suffering from some type of metabolic disease or ailment or a heart attack or at risk, and their life can improve by taking the shot once a week, and they can gain some type of confidence and just take steps forward, I don't necessarily think that's the end of the world.
No, I know somebody who this is a disease. I mean, like he's obese to the point to where, I mean, it's gonna kill him. It's a disease that he cannot control.
Yeah.
He cannot control it. He's tried. Unfortunately, he has really bad side effects to Ozempic and Mounjaro, which we'll get into here in a second, which, it's not the magic pill, unfortunately, that everybody's thought it was. But, like, he tried it, and he had, like, crazy cramping and constipation and bloat and just all the symptoms.
Yeah, which we'll talk about.
But he, it's unfortunate because this would have been a great solution for
somebody that you would say would be a good choice.
It ain't gonna, like, nutrition ain't, like, dieting ain't gonna work. It just isn't.
Yeah,
he's at this point, it's an addiction.
Yeah, and so it's like in that kind of fork in the road. I think that having a better life for certain individuals that are really there is kind of a no-brainer. Right?
Totally.
I'd rather them not die and be on Ozempic than die from being obese.
Yeah.
Or have some type of other ailment that comes along.
Now, the thing is, though, is that in those situations, we all can agree that would be a good option.
Yeah.
The problem is that not everybody who's getting prescribed is what we would consider clinically or medically obese, and this is the last resort.
Right, yeah.
Which I feel like, personally, I feel like this needs to be last resort.
Yeah.
This needs to be like, you've actually tried and you've worked with weight loss coaches and you've tried therapy and you've done practical dieting and just really, really gave it a really good try. And it's just to the point now where we're risking health issues now. And we have, and like, but if you haven't tried that yet.
You haven't even given it the old college try yet.
You know, and just jumping straight towards getting prescribed this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, what good are you going to be if you get off of it? Because eventually you're probably not going to want to keep sticking a needle in your gut every day or every week, right?
Totally. Well, and I think it's one of those things that like everybody, I think, faces the uphill battle of like losing weight or changing their body composition, whether you're height weight proportionate and you just want to lose 10 pounds for a wedding or whatever it is. I think it's all still behavioral changes that can be challenging, or that is kind of just like a pain in the ass, even if you're totally capable. And I think that the idea of something that is a no-brainer, don't think about it, and get you those results is going to be appealing to everyone, even if it's not the right audience and the right people. Totally. Especially if it starts to go like viral on social media, right? Where everybody's talking about it and talking about getting on it, whether they should be or not, you know, and that hive mind starts to take over, you know, and then it's like, oh yeah, my sister-in-law did it. Oh yeah, and like my coworker, three of my coworkers are on it, and the one guy, he already lost this much weight, you know. Like,
it's ubiquitous.
Yeah, it's just like a viral, you know, viral mindset where.
But there's also like a little shame around it too, where people don't want to admit that they lost weight with it, because I take a lot of consultations for weight loss every week, and I had this one woman, and she was like 54, 55 years old, right? And she was like, give me her whole life story. And she's like, yeah, I've just always yo-yoed. And she's like, I was at my heaviest, like 225.
Okay.
And then I got down to 150. And then she's like, but I've gained 35 back. And she's at 185 now. And I was like, wow, you went from 225, you lost 75 pounds? She's like, yes. I was like, when did that happen? She said, like over the last year and a half. I was like, oh wow, so super recently. I was like, congrats, that's a huge accomplishment. And I was like, and nothing's changed, and you've gained 20 or 35 back, and nothing's changed. She's like, nope, I eat the exact same as I did before. I was like, that is so interesting that you would lose 75 pounds in
without any
year,
changes.
and then nothing dietarily or exercise. You're still working out 5 days a week. You say, I have to just take your word for it. You're eating the same amount of food, but you've put on 35 pounds. It's just so crazy. I was like, anything else going on that helped you get that weight loss? She goes, well, I was on Ozempic. I was like, okay.
Right. You know,
After 15 minutes, I had to like pry it out of her. I'm like, okay, that's helpful. And I take it you're not on that anymore, right? She's like, no. Why did you get off of it? Because I don't want to take the injections anymore. And I want to know that I can do this on my own. I don't want to be hooked on this stuff forever.
Right. Yeah, and I think that word forever, it's like one thing I think it's important to realize is that this is a lifetime subscription.
Yeah.
The mentality towards it is that you're going to do this forever. It's not meant to be done for a couple months, lose 10 pounds, and then like, oh, I'm done, right?
Just do it for like 8 weeks, get ready for that honeymoon or wedding, and then
Exactly. I mean, I think that's what people are doing though, and I think that's you know, so it's like what they say that the current round of Ozempic is what they say 15% of your body weight is what the studies suggest.
Well,
at least one study.
So the most popular one that pops up when you start Googling around is this study that was performed of 2,000 adults that participated, and over a 68-week period, which is a long time.
Just about over a year. Right?
The people who were on the semaglutide lost, on average, half of them lost 15% of their body weight, and a third of them lost 20% of their body weight, which sounds interesting. Yeah. And then there was a placebo group that only did the lifestyle changes, and that was where the study gets very vague on what these lifestyle changes actually mean. How was it monitored and tracked?
How much adherence was
it's 68 weeks, is 16 months. It's a long time to be tracking 1,000 people. You know, how accurate is these lifestyle changes that were taking place? But anyways, the placebo group lost about 2.4% of their body weight over the same period of time. So I don't know. At first, you're kind of like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then there's two things I want to bring up with this. Number one, 15% over 15 months is not that crazy. That's like 3 pounds a month. We have people.
If you're a 300-pound person, which is a large person, but let's say you're a 300-pound person, that's like 3.7 pounds a month. It's like a pound
45
a week.
pounds of weight loss over a
16
month period, which is cool. That's great. And
it's
by the way,
solid,
awesome.
But like for a 300-pound person, if they underwent a fairly regular, moderate, like middle ground diet and exercise plan, I think
we can
to
hit
lose
those
a
results.
pound a week isn't that crazy.
Especially at that weight. I mean,
at that weight, exactly.
We just get people eating slight adjustments to their meal plans, and we see people drop 10, 15 pounds their first month at that weight. Just diet and exercise, really.
Just diet and exercise.
So not groundbreaking for me, but one thing that I'd like to note here is that upon further investigation, one layer of the onion peeled deeper, and I actually read the study, and guess who funded that study?
Who was it?
Novo Nordisk, who also makes Ozempic.
Surprise, surprise. Well, they have to have data in order to get it approved by the FDA.
If you can't find your own data, you might as well make it up yourself. So listen, there's no doubt that this stuff's effective, but don't take everything at face value.
Right.
Either.
So it's 15 to 20% for Ozempic, and then Mounjaro is 20% or more. So it's a little more effective, acts on adds another receptor in there. But again, my also understanding is that that's going to plateau.
Yeah.
So depending on your weight, you're not going to just lose that weight forever. It's, that your body reaches a homeostasis and starts to create an equilibrium with this substance coming in. And now, no doubt, I think there are going to be a lot of factors on, are you including diet and exercise on top of it? Are you paying attention? Are you just, taking the drug, so to speak? But I don't believe it's like 30 years from now or 7 years from now, you're just going to be going down in your weight and going down your weight forever. And
this is where it starts to get into, because this wasn't approved until 2021. So it's only time of recording. It's been 3 years essentially, right? 2024 right now. So right now is when you're starting to see people who have been on it for 2 or 3 years who are reaching this point where they're like, okay, enough's enough. Like, yes, I don't want to stick a needle in my gut every week. And then B, I think really what's happening is that there's a word for it that I can't recall, but it's essentially like everything gets normalized, right? Yeah. And we forget the things that got us to where we were, and we start to just think that it's just who we are now. Like if you've worked with a good strength coach, and before you met the strength coach, you were, weak and frail, and then 2 years later you're a beast, but you've been a beast for months and months and months, and you just start to think that oh, I can do this on my own now. I don't need that anymore. And so it's like we start to think that this is just always how it's been. It's just who I am now. And I don't need the thing that got us here anymore. And that might be true in some context, but I think that when we look at it from the standpoint of your appetite has been suppressed for 2 years or whatever, you've not felt the hunger that you had forever. And so your memory now is lapsed, and you start to think that oh, this is just who I am now. It
is who you are, but it's this is who I really am.
Yeah,
right.
And then so naturally, I think we would all do the same thing. We just go, enough's enough. I don't need. It's expensive. It hurts. I want to feel like I have control over this now. It's been 2 years. It's just who I am. I don't think I need it anymore.
I've gotten to where I want to be.
Yeah, and then people get off of it, and then just like the girl I gave the example of, next thing you know, within 3 months, she's put 35 pounds back on, because one thing that I hear. Yeah. Appetite comes roaring back as soon as you get off of this. It's just
sure. I mean, just being unacclimated with hunger in the same way. Just the contrast of anything makes it more potent. If you haven't experienced something in a long time, even if it's not in that intense of an exposure to whatever it is, just that contrast of not having experienced it just makes it so intense.
Totally.
And so, I've heard the weight regain is very strong.
Very strong.
Almost always coming back to where you were heavier than where you started, especially if you have not adopted lifestyle changes.
And the only thing that worse than feeling like no matter what you do, you can't lose weight. The only thing worse than that is to lose the weight and then gain it all back again.
Yeah, it'd be heartbreaking.
Yeah, because you just feel wow,
Well,
What control do I have over myself?
and it's the same as it's a lot of the same with like gastric bypass and gastric
Right.
sleeve surgeries, right? You have this mechanical situation where you're literally reducing the stomach to the size of an egg that has no ability to stretch to limit the amount of food that can get into it. Don't have to change any behavior because you physically can't eat anymore, and so it's just decided for you. But yet, a significant percentage of the people that get those surgeries gain some type of substantial weight back. Maybe not all of it, but they gain weight. The stomach stretches back out. Their eating patterns they're not taking any lifestyle changes, and so they're still just like
Drinking
eating
their calories more.
drinking their calories more, still just eating poor food choices. But just because you can't eat a whole pizza at once doesn't mean you can't eat pizza at all,
Right.
or fried chicken, or
Yeah.
cheeseburgers. It just means you can't eat as much in one sitting, but that doesn't mean that you're not making different food choices altogether, right? So it's just an interesting thing that there are these kind of drastic measures that can help certain individuals, but at the same time, there's so many statistics that show that weight gain returns even with these drastic measures. And I think that just must be a heartbreaking thing. I mean, to go under the knife, for example, and then still gain your weight back. And I would say the same thing as this. You commit to these injections, everything changes, and then after a year or two, you're like, okay, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore.
And I think that's what our angle is here. It's
Yeah.
like, we're not saying don't do it. I think it's clear that like there are certain cases where it's out of control and you need medical intervention, and that's
100%.
okay. But I think that if you're being honest with yourself, and we're talking maybe 20 to 40 pounds, and it's like, okay, maybe I'm 220 pounds and I should be 180, or maybe I'm 180 pounds and I should be 140 pounds. Like, have you actually done the work to try on your own? And if the answer is I've tried everything and nothing works, and you can really be honest with yourself that you've given it a huge amount of time and effort, then you know what?
Right. I mean, there are people with thyroid conditions.
Yes.
There are people with ovarian conditions that affect their hormones. Very extreme cases, but that literally would be qualifiers for me of somebody like, okay, this would be a good thing.
Sure.
But, I think it's also important to realize that if you're actually going to a doctor and they're going through the procedure of prescribing this to you correctly, it's supposed to be in conjunction with the nutritionist and other lifestyle changes. Like you are absolutely supposed to start physical activity and exercise, learn how to eat, and start to adjust these other lifestyle factors along with taking the drug. It is not just meant to be like, oh, I want to lose weight, take the drug, and nothing else changes. I mean, like as prescribed, that is literally like the FDA guidelines about taking these drugs, is that it comes with dietary and lifestyle changes.
But it's just like the bottom line is that like everyone's going to be like, okay, sure. And then they're not going to do it, because it's like, that's not fundamentally who they are.
It's not the, well, and I think it just goes to what you're saying though, that if you haven't given it the good, honest try, like have you gotten a personal trainer? Have you gone to a nutritionist? Have you worked with some type of coach that's geared toward weight loss? It's like without doing those things, which you're supposed to do if you go on the drug anyway, if you haven't gone through that route first, then you don't really know.
Right.
And you're kind of doing this like kind of Band-Aid over the situation where if you ever go off of it, you're going to return back to normal, potentially worse. And then I think that also that if you wanted to continue to really take that weight loss all the way, you'd have to do these strategies anyway.
Yeah, like exactly.
Right,
So
like-
you see, so you're supposed to do it before you get on it or in conjunction with it.
Yep.
And then it's not meant to be a life sentence, even though it tends to be, I think, for a lot of people. But then eventually, if you ever want to get off of it, you're going to have to do the things anyways, because it's not
otherwise
like,
you're going to bounce
It's not
back.
like you're just fixed now and everything's okay.
Right. Yeah, and
these
that's
are-
one of the things. Unfortunately, this whole relationship to, these things, it goes away. You stop taking it, it goes away.
And so, if you're ever going to wean yourself off of it and have a normal life, then these fundamentals have to be learned.
They have to be learned.
That's where I would just say, as a person who works in weight loss and health and fitness, it's like, then why not just do that? Because if that's the inevitability, then why not just try that? Because one thing that I always tell our clients, and one of my personal mottos is that when you learn how to work for it, you teach yourself how to keep it.
I feel that.
So if you have to work for something, then what's happening is you're teaching yourself how to make sure you never lose it.
Yeah.
Why do lottery winners blow their money because they don't have the money management skills to know what to do with $10 million. And so they just blow it and they're broke again in 2 years because they didn't learn how to keep it. Right.
Yeah.
So, not to say that like it's such a binary, but I do think that if this is within the realm of like possibility and like, okay, we're talking like 30 to 40 pounds that with any solid nutrition and exercise routine done consistently, anyone can pull 30 to 40 pounds off in 4 to 8 months comfortably.
Yeah.
So that's my angle.
100%. And I think even if you have taken it, which I'm sure somebody's taken it out there who's on it.
No one. They all just do it naturally.
To at least use that decision to cascade into seeding other better decisions for your life. Right. It might look or appeal to be a cure-all, quick fix, don't have to take any responsibility. But what I would encourage people is that if they're going to make the decision, or if they already have, to use that decision to act as the wedge to start to include other decisions for their lifestyle in general.
Yes.
Like we've talked about on the podcast of that cascade effect. Like if you start working out, you might start eating better, which means you might show up in your work or your family life differently, right? Mm-hmm. Or any of those things you get a promotion, which means, now I'm going to start taking care of myself, which now I'm going to start eating better. But that one good decision for yourself can often like cascade out, right?
Of course.
Affect all these other aspects of your life.
Yeah.
And so I think at least that much, if you're going to make this decision to go get this drug injected into you every week, to use that as the wedge to remind yourself that you're taking some type of measure instead of looking at it as the magic pill, to look at it as I'm making a decision to
walk
this path, right? At least that much.
It is an interesting
would be my request
conundrum because we agree this should not be done in isolation.
No.
Meaning nothing else in your lifestyle changes and then all of a sudden this is the only thing you do, and then all the bad habits still exist. They're just it's like sweeping them under the rug, right? Or just dialing it down. So maybe instead of, 2 sodas, it's just like 1, right? Or whatever, which is good in the short term. But I think the problem is that when this is done in isolation and all of a sudden appetite is suppressed, there's consequences to that. You're going to lose muscle tissue. Yes. You're going to lose fat.
Definitely.
But you're going to lose. But if we're not training and we're just eating less, and you're already a deconditioned individual with poor eating habits, and now you're just a even more deconditioned individual because now even though the food you're eating before wasn't healthy, you were just eating enough of it to get your nutrients, and now you're just eating less of it, right. But it's still not good food. Like, you're not going to look the way you want to look, It's not going to be a great
if you're just like
look.
eating like 50 or 60 grams of protein at most a day because you just can't stomach food. I mean, I had an old client that was literally like, I just can't eat food anymore. It's just, he was like, soup is my best friend because it's something that'll actually like pass through my stomach.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just so wild to hear. And like, in that truth, he lost so much weight, but he also kind of looked like emaciated.
Yeah.
It almost looked like he could have had like a disease or something where you look at him, it's like, you're much, much thinner. And in one hand, you look healthier because of that, in quotations. But at the other hand, I'm like, do you have cancer? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but he had that kind of look where I'm like, are you okay? Like,
it's malnourished.
You're malnourished.
Like
Fundamentally, you're malnourished. And it's like, that isn't necessarily going to be serving you either, especially the older you get, especially elderly populations.
Yeah, bone density, frailty, you fall, you break a hip, and that kills most seniors.
Right, and so muscle mass is going to be the major determinant of whether that actually will kill you or not. So not that seniors are that overweight most of the time, but still.
But still, though, I think that it's just. But the conundrum that I was saying is like, on the one hand, this should not be done in isolation. In my opinion, I would imagine I'm not alone. I think you agree. You need to be doing this with like proper macronutrients, so you're not malnourished, in strength training, so
Absolutely.
You're maintaining muscle tissue and bone density. The conundrum in my mind is, okay, but if you're going to do that, then you're probably going to lose the weight anyways.
Yes.
So why bother?
Why bother?
Well, it'll take the edge off. It'll take the hunger off, right?
It'll take the hunger off. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because the idea is that you go to your doctor and you get prescribed a proper dosage. And so that's one thing, is that, ideally you're started off at a standard dosage, which is 2.4 milligrams.
2.4 is the standard for what I'm saying.
And then if the results that you're needing aren't being met, then they would put you up. But if you don't go to a doctor, like, there's the ability to order it online. There are these methods that you can order it online and just circumnavigate.
Yeah, that's like the side prescriptions. Like you don't actually get prescribed weight loss. You get prescribed something else that these semaglutides treat, and so you can kind of a roundabout way get it.
Yeah, and so at least if you go to a doctor, they're supposed to at least be prescribing you a nutritionist or telling you to go to a nutritionist. And I would like to think that most people listen to their doctors. Doctors have this kind of dogmatic effect on people.
Well, let me tell you though,
not everybody I know, but
I mean, we're nutritionists, and when we get on a call, people who are coming off of Ozempic, they've never worked with a coach before. So
it's just wow. But that's the thing. But I also think not every doctor is in the game for the perfect method either.
Right.
You know,
it's an expensive ass drug. There's clearly a conflict of interest. It's $900 a month. They just bill your insurance. So like obviously like that's a lot of money if you got 30 million people paying $900 a month.
Yeah, and we all know that there's a relationship between pharmaceutical companies, drug reps, and doctors. And, scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Oh, yeah. Fucking Novo Nordisk, the one who made the study that they
it's like the fact that drug reps even like take doctors out to like fancy business dinners is like, wait, what a second.
How is this not a conflict of interest?
Yes, exactly. And so, I think that's also the other thing to consider is that what if your job shifts and your insurance can't pay for it anymore? Right. If you do decide to go on this, if this is something you are considering, and if with all this information you still think it's the right choice for you, I think another thing to make sure that's being considered is like, what are you going to do if you lose your job or your job shifts or your insurance shifts? Mm-hmm. Are you going to pay for it out of pocket?
Yeah.
Considering this is meant to be taken for years upon years upon years, I think it's just another factor to consider that it's not just like, oh, it's going to work for me for my weight loss, which I struggle with. Mm-hmm. It's just like there is the potential that if you don't have the insurance to pay for it, then what are you going to do?
Yeah. And like barring extreme cases, like again, if you're not in that like, this is like a serious medical health concern when you're just kind of below that threshold and it's more of like, well, it would be nice. This is why you really got to ask yourself, like, would you not feel better having the autonomy and the confidence to know that you, no matter what your circumstances are in life, that you have agency over your body and you have control over this and you're not dependent on a external thing to get you to where you want to be. And you just don't know what's going to happen.
Unfortunately,
it's just like if you can do it on your own, then I feel like you should, for the pure fact that like you're going to know how you got it, you're going to have to work for it, and then by working for it, you're going to teach yourself how to keep it, and then when you arrive at the same destination, you're just going to have the confidence in knowing that you're self-made and that you're not dependent on anything or anyone for your health and fitness. And that's a very powerful place to be.
100%. I mean, I think an interesting way to look at it would be like, how would you want your kids to know how to participate with food and exercise in a way that they would be able to have an outcome that they were looking for? Or would you put your kids on Ozempic, or would you want them to not have the autonomy and education and to have to depend on a drug in order to be height, weight proportionate and healthy?
Right.
And like project that onto the people that you care about most. And if you wouldn't want that for them, is that what you want for you in a way? Because I think most people would want the people that they love and care about, particularly their little ones, to have an education, to understand how to participate with food and how to exercise and move well, or find the joy in some type of physical activity.
Just independence.
Yeah,
it's independence.
Yeah, you don't want them to be dependent. Yeah, 100%. Right. You don't want them to be under the thumb of some drug in order to be a certain way.
Yeah, it's like it's like the cane metaphor, right? Like if you hurt your ankle and you start walking with a cane, next thing you know, you start to rely so heavily on that cane that you become dependent on it. And then like your whole gait and your whole structure and anatomy shifts to like have this cane. So now you don't even know how to walk without it anymore, right?
Yeah.
So instead of just like becoming dependent on this thing, this crutch, this cane, you got to rehab that ankle. You got to start moving. You got to reprogram the mind. We got to do the things necessary to get you on the path of sustainability long term, because I think, to bring it full circle, unless you plan on being in this forever. And some people are like, I've actually talked to some people where they're like, no, I'm going to do it forever.
100%. I have a client.
I want to do it forever. I'm like, you know what? Fine.
Because I was talking, I was like, oh, wow, you're on it. It's like, so you're going to do it forever? It's like, oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
why
wow,
not?
it's quite the decision.
For most people, I think that's more the exception than the rule, though. I think most people would prefer not to be on it forever. At least I hope. So you're gonna have to you're deferring this inevitability.
Yeah.
Great. So maybe you deferred having to tackle your health and fitness by a year or 2 or 3. But it's a deferment. It's eventually you're going to have to face this. And call me crazy, but why not just do it now? So when that 2 to 3 year period comes, you're in the same exact spot as you would have been on the Ozempic if you just get 2 to 3 years of lifestyle change, and you can transform.
Well, it's really interesting because that very person who said I'm going to do it for life he's a massage client of mine. So started with me because he moved here in LA and is working with a trainer that I know. And so that's how he got referred to me for body work. But in this conversation, the thing he's struggling with now is skeletal muscle mass. So he's training with this trainer because he lost so much muscle mass. And he now struggles with eating enough protein every day. And like we talked about, it's like an actual issue. Yeah. It's not just like, oh, it's hard to get my protein in. It's like I literally am like fighting to make sure I eat enough protein.
Yeah.
Because my trainer's like, yo, like this isn't like you can't not eat protein.
Right.
You're wasting away.
Or just eat anything.
Yeah. So it's just interesting because here he is, somebody who's willing to commit to it for life, facing the struggles that we're all going to face, but facing them in the sense that my appetite's so low, I want to eat so little that it's almost like I can't eat enough protein. Like I can't do it. It's a battle. Not because it's just hard to do, but because I have no appetite and it's that much harder. It's
analogous to TRT to me in a lot of ways. I don't take TRT, but I've entertained the idea and I've done a little bit of research. Now I decided not to because it's not worth it. Because once you're on the needle of TRT for men, you're on it for life because it's basically like your body's like, okay, no more testosterone.
Yeah, and that's testosterone replacement therapy.
Yeah, TRT is testosterone replacement therapy, but like, once you introduce the external hormone of testosterone in, your body will never make its own testosterone the same levels again. Just once. Balls shrink up.
Forever.
Adios. And you're on the needle for life, and then you're just riding this testosterone roller coaster where you inject it and you have this massive hit of blood serum testosterone, and then that starts to fade after a few days, and you kind of go through this like emotional roller coaster as your body is like getting this external dose of hormones. Now I understand that this is not TRT,
for sure.
But what's analogous to me is that there are some men who need it. There are some men who need it, just like there are some people who struggle with obesity who need a semaglutide.
Yeah.
And there are some men who need TRT, like they don't produce it, or their life is just terrible, but for most people who get on it, because now you're seeing like 28-year-olds who are like on TRT because they just want to be jacked.
Yeah.
The thing is that
you're 45 and it went down a little bit.
Yeah, but also you're drinking, like a fish, and you eat processed foods, and you don't lift weights, and you're sleeping like shit, and you're just looking at your phone all the time. It's like your testosterone levels are not low because you turned 40. Your testosterone levels are low because you eat like shit, you're dehydrated, you sleep terribly, and you don't lift weights.
Yeah.
That's why your testosterone levels are low. So you don't need TRT. You just need to clean up a little lifestyle choices here and there. And then almost everybody will get probably back up into the normal range.
Yeah.
But people just jump to it because it's expensive, and doctors will prescribe it, insurances will pay for it, and next thing you know, you have 30-year-olds on TRT who you're like, what? Dude, you realize that you're on it for life now, man.
Wild.
That's it.
Wow.
And so the cautionary tale is like, if you must, you should. If you could, but you don't need it, maybe consider...
Maybe you shouldn't.
...the higher road. Maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because you got to learn the skill, or you're either A, you're on it for life, or B, you're going to have to learn the skill eventually, and you're just kind of delaying the inevitable.
Well, and so you talked about that client who does qualify in your mind, or that person that does qualify in your mind for being on it, but wasn't able to.
He had side effects.
So there's side effects.
Yeah.
What are if you're thinking about it, it's information. What?
Most of the stuff that there's stuff that I've read, which is common, most like like gastrointestinal issues.
Which I'm sure everybody,
There's rare cases of stomach paralysis. It slows the digestion of your food, so you get heartburn and indigestion. Especially if you're obese, you probably already struggle with a lot of this GI issues, anyways.
Yep.
So it might exacerbate heartburn, indigestion, bloat.
Yep.
All those are huge. He experienced all that, and then there's another layer of it of just like fatigue, dizziness, and some cases I think like crazy like seizures or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, diarrhea, constipation is another big one.
Yeah.
So like basically, as you can imagine, just gastrointestinal distress. And I think it's just about 50% of the people will experience one of the side effects.
Yeah.
Nausea, something of that nature. So it's an interesting thing to think about that like once a week. And those side effects tend to be stronger right after the injection. So it's just wild to think about that like, oh yeah, it's my Monday, it's time for injection. I'm going to be very nauseous for about 48 hours.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'll just have diarrhea for a couple of days. No big deal. Forever.
Same thing with like TRT guys. Is like they shoot up their testosterone injection. They're like on top of the world, and then all of a sudden they start just like all the symptoms of just low testosterone, irritability, and just feeling weak and moody towards the end of their week-long cycle or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like because it's not just this like body regulated thing anymore that everything's in harmony and balance. It's just like spikes and then valleys.
Yeah, and then I think what I was reading, long-term side effects can also include pancreatitis and thyroid cancer, and actually contributes to thyroid cancer. Yeah. So it's like I think those are just things to be aware of.
Which I think, listen, like the risks of being morbidly obese are way greater, and so I would say that if it's the option between risking indigestion and heartburn, but you're not going to have a stroke, then that's probably a safe bet to take. But for most folks who could probably accomplish their goal through not even crazy lifestyle interventions, but just slight adjustments, then we should probably investigate that first.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think, outside of, it's not to say that this chemical or this drug doesn't have outside uses. So I was reading that basically, as we were talking about, it affects the neurochemistry.
Yeah.
Right? It affects our brain. And one of the things it starts to do is actually change. So it's not just that you're full because you have food in your stomach that's not emptying as fast, but it actually affects your relationship to craving food and the reward system. And they don't know exactly what exactly is happening with the mechanisms, but it's somewhere about your dopamine response to a reward system.
There's got to be some like Pavlovian response, right? Because I think one of the big issues that I understand around weight loss is just it's the conditioned responses around food, right? So we're stimulated through something good happening to us that day or something bad happening to us. And then the response, the conditioned response is I'm going to celebrate or commiserate with food, right?
Yeah.
Or alcohol. So the stimulus response, there's no space in between. It's just boom, boom, right? Stimulated, bell rings, dog salivate, right? This like Pavlovian response.
It's the anticipation.
It's the anticipation.
Because the dopamine is about it's not about the actual ingestion as much as it's about the anticipation and that kind of a situation.
Yeah. And so if nothing else, it's a pattern interrupt, I think, where it's like you can now have a great day and not feel like you have to celebrate with food, or you can have a shitty day and not feel like you have to commiserate with food. There's just a pattern interrupt there where it's like, oh, I'm just going to like have a cup of tea and watch Formula One on Netflix.
Right. But so in that capacity, there's ongoing research now that's kind of new to it all, but basically using the drug to fight addiction.
Yeah.
Because basically removing the same way that it removes the joy or the want or that craving of food, they're finding it right now, at least with rats, that it's doing the same thing with cocaine, with alcohol, and other classic addictions. But basically,
rats.
Yeah, and they found that people that go on it stop compulsory behaviors. So gambling, drugs, cigarettes, skin picking, and it's all kind of like anecdotal. It's all just observational. But they're finding that these people that suffer from these kind of compulsive addictive behaviors are being kind of like cured or having them reduced when they go on Ozempic simultaneously.
And losing weight.
And even on the dark side, just to talk about all the interesting things about it, I was reading even another study about how they were saying that it might cause depression and potential suicidal
It's almost like
thoughts.
this, almost like the other end of that
Yes.
coin is you're so not stimulated now.
Yes, exactly.
that it's like there's no dopamine, and so it's just like you're kind of drifting into like apathy or complacency.
Yeah, you're removing so much pleasure response from the things in life that you fade into like the abyss. And they were talking about like the potential of having to have a mental health screening for people that are being prescribed Ozempic. And again, this is all very early, but these are all kind of because it's blown up so much. But there are studies that are going into this now. So I think it's just things to be aware about, the goods, the bads, and just, it's just interesting.
And just remember, it's only been 3 years
that there's been this wide use population.
We're just now getting data on the first sort of cohort of people who were like early adopters back in 2021. They're all kind of cycling off. They've been on it for a couple of years now, and we have finally like decent data. And anecdotally, I mean, the calls that I get on people who've tried it, like it's interesting how many people had a negative experience with it, how many people had the side effects, and they're just like, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it anymore. One person, she like blacked out, had to get rushed to the hospital, and just like woke up in the operating room. Like there's shit that happens, and I don't mean to sound like hyperbolic here or anything, but it's not the magic pill that it can work, and it is a powerful, amazing drug, but just proceed with caution, do your own research, and also probably go after lifestyle adjustment first. And then if you can really look at yourself in the mirror and say that you've tried and that you can't do it, fine. You got my blessing for whatever that's worth.
If you're already on it and you haven't put some attention towards the lifestyle changes, just do remember you have to. Like
it's inevitable.
Yeah. So whether you've decided to take the plunge or you're thinking about it or you've decided to never do it, just got to remember you got to take those steps as well. Yeah.
Just remember the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step.
That's right. Don't look at the mountain. Look at the stair in front of you, right? Or whatever it is.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. That was episode 9, and I thought that was pretty good.
That's good. So, not medical advice, just sharing information.
Yeah, we're just two trainers who, dedicated their life to this stuff. So what do we know? All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Peace out.
Be well.